There's also, then on the very far end of the building, there's a brick room. And hobos had found a way to get in there. And you could find wine bottles there sometime. As I remember, it wasn't really dirty. You could go back there and you could tell somebody's sleeping there, but actually it wasn't bad. But anyway, some hobos had found it a place to stay. The only thing was that the Union Pacific Railroad still had an office where the Railroad Historic Society has an office now, right about the middle of this building. Everything else was empty and pretty bad shape. The city planning department and the city council wanted to make this building, refurbish it. They wanted to kind of increase foot traffic. They wanted to help all the businesses in this circle around here. And so they decided they wanted to buy this building and restore it and make it a nicer part of town. Some of the ideas that they run through before they bought it or when they were buying it was to put in a microbrewery here. They also talked about a farmer's market and also a bicycle repair shop and livery and build a trail over this levee here so you can drive a bicycle from here clear up to the lake. And they discussed the park and ride area. They talked about putting regular railroad rolling stock out here for an exhibit. And they talked about putting in a public restroom across the street here. So that's some of the issues that they was going on when they decided to buy this building. Word was getting around town that this building, the city was buying the building. And the city planning department was saying that they knew that the Pueblo County Historical Society was looking for a place to move, and so they told them they could have some space in here if they wanted, after they bought the building. Where they were was not a really good place. They were in the basement of the Vail Hotel, and a lot of times you could go there and the door would be locked. The reason was they just didn't have enough volunteers that wanted to stay there and keep it open. The Railroad Museum, the museum that have all this railroad stock across the street here, they're members of this society now too. And they also wanted some building. They went to a city council meeting and asked them if they could have space in here after they bought it. And the city council assured them they could have space in here. They didn't, neither one of them just said any space, just you're assured you can have space in here. And Hurdy, Gardner, and Frolic were chosen as the contractors to do the restoration. The estimated cost, including asbestos abatement, abasement of lead-based paint, 27,000 square feet of renovation, plumbing, fire protection, site utilities, heating, air conditioning, electrical. It was going to be, the bid was $2,566,000. That's what they paid for getting this restored. The site is on approximately 3.68 acres, and the museum itself is said to have been started on November 7th, 1989. That's when they chose the first board of directors. The original members were the Pueblo County Historic Society, the Pueblo Archaeological and Historic Society, the Pueblo Locomotive and Rail Historical Society, which have all this railroad equipment across the street here, and the Pueblo Street Railway Foundation. The Pueblo Street Railway Foundation was the Concealia brothers. They have a full restored streetcar. And one of the things they wanted to do was relay track here and put up power to drive it. And they had a lot of trouble with getting permits and all that. So it never did happen. But there's somewhere there's a fully restored, they spent a lot of money restoring a Pueblo streetcar. But anyway, that's the four groups that were part of the museum when we started. The first time the board started meeting in a cafe, and that's where our meeting went. And we chose the name Southern Colorado Heritage Center, when we had big ideas when it started. We was gonna cover Lahaina and Kim and Trinidad, and there's a lot of history, and it could be a great thing with that. We were gonna cover the whole southeastern corner of Colorado with the exhibits. But whenever we started putting stuff in here, let's put this, everything, there wasn't anybody pushing that. Everything we put in, what had to do with Pueblo or Pueblo County, and that's the way it evolved. But that's how come we had the name. We had a big idea. But actually the way it evolved is pretty much just Pueblo County and Pueblo City. We went through the process of incorporating this as a nonprofit organization. It's not a tough process, but we went through the process of making it a nonprofit, incorporating it as a nonprofit organization. Ann Thompson was chosen as our first leader, museum director. And she had several years' experience in the museum before she came here. And she started meetings with all the other museum directors in Pueblo. She'd meet with them and have coffee and talk about her and this museum. And she also did the same way with all the county commissioners and the city council members. She went to every one of them and told about this new museum that was starting up here in Pueblo. And she got support from all of them by doing that. And when she left here, she went to the Oklahoma State Historic Society. And now she's got a very top position in Oklahoma, in the Oklahoma State Historical Society. They also hired a lady called Lisa Sasaki, a Japanese lady. She was fully Japanese, but she was also an experienced curator. The purchase of the building was $61,000. That's what they paid for this building. That didn't include rebuilding it. That's what cost money. They put up a large platform or stage up here between this building and the street, and had loudspeaker and telephone, microphone, and there was a crowd. You'd be surprised how many people were outside when they had a ceremony of the city buying this from the railroad. And they had one of those ceremonial checks about 3 foot by 4 foot that they give to the representative of the railroad. But it was quite a crowd of people out here when they bought it. Yeah, you'd be surprised how many, let's see, I've got one minute. Anyway, in those days, each one that wanted money from the city council all the nonprofits had to go to the city council. Once a year you could go to the city council meeting and you'd present your budget and what you're gonna do with the money. It was a pain in the neck for the city council and the city county commissioners, but every one of the nonprofits, there's a lot of nonprofits that don't get money from the city, but there's a lot that do. And it was a pain in the neck for city council. Every one of them had to come and explain it, and you had to answer questions and everything. Finally, they said, let's make it one budget, just a line item budget. This is a total, this is what we give to nonprofits, period. Then they made a committee. Now we have a committee that each year they have forms you can fill out, and you get the form and fill it out, and it's got all the proper questions. And this committee does decide how much money they're going to give to each nonprofit. As an aside, also I wanted to say that county commissioners contracted with the University of Southern Colorado to do a study, an assessment of the economic impact of all the nonprofits here. And so the university, you'd be surprised what they found. They found that the nonprofits were the cornerstone of Pueblo's economy. All the nonprofits are a cornerstone of Pueblo's economy. They found 93 nonprofits. All of them don't get money from it. But anyway, there were 93 nonprofits. They pay salaries and they buy stuff. and they were providing 2,385 full and part-time jobs. They found that the total impact of nonprofits was greater than the steel mill or the university. And the nonprofits bring in, out of the 125 million, they bring 49 million from outside sources that comes here, don't come from, they bring money in. The Rocky Mountain Steel brings in 101 million, and the university 64 million. So the nonprofits bring in more money than the steel mill or the other ones. Nonprofits provide a lot of stuff that would probably be up to the county, or you just have to do without. There's Spanish Peaks Mental Health Center, there's Homeless, Pueblo Diversified Industries, Posada, Harp, Catholic Charities, Bonfils Blood Center, Sangre de Cristo Hospice and Palliative Care, and on. And those are all just health nonprofits. All the nonprofits we have make this a nicer place to live. Every one of them, what they do is something that you're glad we have it. But there's a bunch of them, and they really do make this a nice community to live in. We signed the lease agreement, this building from the city, was February 22nd, 2000. It was signed by Corinne Kaler, who was president of the city council, and Tom Cummins, who was president of the Heritage Center. I don't know, when I said that we met at the cafe when we started, they chose me as a president of the Heritage Center at that time. So it was me and her that signed a lease agreement for this building. It's $10 a year. I hope we're paying it, because someday we might get a big bill for $100 Anyway, that was February 22nd, 2000. And that's when the city gave us $40,000 that first year, and then the county commissioners also gave us a pretty good sum of money to start with. I'm not really consider myself a president type, but I did the best that I could. One of the things we asked for was a turnaround on B Street, goes down here. If you'll notice at the end, there's a big circle with a curb on it and asphalt pavement. We were picturing school buses coming here and dropping off kids, and the bus would have a place to turn around. Also, there was some stress getting started. I would mention it just simply because it might have changed the course of what we're doing. There was a couple of really strong-willed people that were from the Pueblo County Historic Society. And I don't mean the Pueblo County Historic Society, I'm just talking about a couple of people. But I still have a letter that says the board of directors, the majority of the board of directors has to come from the Pueblo County Historical Society. And also the name on the building, the only name we can have is Pueblo County Historic Society. And in some of their literature that they published, they would said that the city gave them this building. And it's not true at all, but it was a pretty stressful time, and it came up at the board meetings. But the only reason I mention this is it could have changed the course of the way we're going. Everybody is equal. I'm sure when you joined here, you never thought about not being equal. Everybody, I'm a member, you're a member, we're exactly equal. In the same way with all the organizations that make up the Heritage Center. As far as I'm concerned, it is true. We're all equal. Just because one might say, well, we're important because we're the first ones or something. It's not like that. Everybody is equal. Anyway, maybe because I was president at that time, it stressed me more, but it might have actually made a difference in the course of the way we're doing. The city's volunteers, they welcome any group that wanted to join. We asked they wanted to be inclusive, so they invited the Spanish genealogy to join. They were meeting in the library up here, and they have lots of books, and they got videos on Taos and more in New Mexico, you can't name every town you can think of. They've got books with church records and burials and cemetery records, and if you're doing research on your family, they've got them. But they were having to carry a whole bunch of boxes to the library when they had a meeting. Then the one person, it was their job to take all these boxes and keep them till the next meeting. It was really a pain in the neck. Now that they're part of this organization, they have all these cabinets and they got books here, and when they have a meeting, they can do the research and they can just go to the cabinet and pull out the books and do the research right here. It's helped them a lot. It takes a lot of these organizations to make this work. All these different organizations that are part of the Heritage Center are vital to this thing working. It wouldn't work if each one of them has a membership. If you put all those memberships together, that's a pretty good sized pool of people you can count on for help, you know. And they do, it works really good. Like when they mentioned getting ready for Christmas, they announced we're going to decorate for Christmas. Everybody pitches in. We're all the same. There's nobody different. Everybody comes down here and they pitch in and decorate for Christmas. And hopefully they help put stuff away when they get there. Anyway, I just wanted to stress how important it is that all each one of these organizations that belong to this outfit are vital. I guess that's as much as I want to say.
And everybody that's been involved here at the museum. There's been turbulence at some times, but everything's going really smooth now. We're honoring the heritage of all people, all these different groups that are telling a different piece of the story that is Pueblo. And thank you for being a part of this for, gosh, I didn't realize it's almost 30 years now you've been doing something with this. Yeah, 30 years this November. That's amazing. I would like to...
Especially being he's only 24.
Yeah, right. Yeah, older than I am. But I want to bring Debbie out onto the floor. We have something we'd like to give you, Tom.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you.
This guy is a model that we can all aspire to. Tom has been a founding member, and he's worked in this museum in every aspect. And Tom, on behalf of the museum and the board of directors, we want to present you with an outstanding volunteer award on this day, and thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts for all that you have done.
Thank you. Thank you and all of the rest here. I still enjoy this place very much.
Now don't go anywhere. Okay, I'm gonna grab you a chair so you can sit down. Because this is all about you, okay? Right now, looking at everybody here, I see some founding members here too. Would you all stand so we could honor you?
Who?
The founding members. The founding members?
Tom's family?
Mary, where's Mary? Let's all give them a big round. Okay. Do you want to say anything?
Well, you go grab your stuff. So, being that you were speaking on all the collaboration that really made this museum possible, and I mean, because it's a lot of work, it takes some input from a lot of different people. So we're going to go through and we'll have some brief remarks from each of the founding organizations that are still active with us to go around and say some things about their work with you. We'll start with Debbie, and then I'll introduce people from the other groups as we go. So.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, this museum wouldn't be possible without our volunteers. And we find that as a volunteer, what you're doing is giving your gift of time. And we all know how precious time is in our fast-moving generation. So for someone to give their time for almost 30 years is really something, Tom. And we want to really thank you again from the bottom of our hearts. And I was thinking back, I haven't known Tom too long, but I really got to know all about his work and what he'd done. And I just wanted to kind of show you all the hats that Tom has worn in these past, almost there. Is that gonna fit? So one of Tom's hats that he wears is he's a founding committee member. Another job that he's taken on the museum is he's given programs throughout the thing to educate us, not only about the museum, but the stillworks and all the history that goes around with, a little small, I'm sorry. He's also been a board member, I don't know how many times. Can you tell us? No. I don't know. You've got too many signs to get in here. Let me see what I can do. He's also been a board officer. And how many positions, Tom, have you served? I know you've been president, treasurer.
I guess that's it, president and treasurer.
Well, that's a lot. So he's served as president and treasurer. Tom is also a great researcher. He's constantly looking at things, trying to find out more about this area and educate us. He's even drafted a plan of and wrote out tour guides for people to use when they gave tours in the city. So you also have to wear the researcher's hat. He's also an author. He's written articles for the Lore and other articles that I know he's had for the museum, and he's a very good author also.
You should have started with a bigger hat then.
The other thing that Tom has done for the museum is he's been a tour guide and taken numerous groups, adults as well as children around. He's a builder. Anytime you need something done, you ask Tom to come, he's figured out a way to build it. I think he was responsible for that beautiful entryway that you come into right at the beginning with the glass cabinets. I know you've also been, during my term, I don't know how many times you fixed that gate back there for the trash. And whenever we needed anything, I'd say, Tom, do you think you could do this? Always showed up with his toolbox. Okay, Tom, this house is going to get heavy. He also is a great maintenance worker. Something didn't work, you ask Tom, he'll try to fix it for you. His toolbox I saw a lot. One thing that struck me the most one day with Tom when I was here, he had his toolbox in one hand and his clean in another. And I thought, wow, I think I'm not good. He's one of the very generous donors to the museum. Thanks for all you've done keeping this museum going, both financially and work-wise. The one thing I think, and this just happened maybe 2 years ago, he's out there shoveling snow. He about gave me a heart attack. And I said, Tom, what are you doing? He says, I'm getting rid of all this snow off. So, your hat's just getting fuller and fuller, Tom. He's also been a janitor. You'll see Tom with the broom, vacuum, cleaning up, fixing things. No job is beneath him. He'll do everything. Mover, whenever we wanted something moved, he was here with his truck, helping in the shed. We were all going out there getting Christmas decorations last year, hauling them all in, and I think I had cobwebs in my hair, and Tom was still going with the stuff in his truck. I have a decorator here. I wasn't quite sure how to word this, Tom, but he's even helped with exhibits, trying to get our exhibits going. He's gotten things made for us as far as pictures and putting them there. So I'm going to give you this one too, Tom. Also a curator for the exhibits. We've got a brand new one, don't we, Spencer, is putting out.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little to that?
Yeah, in January, well, a couple months ago, Tom came to me with all these slides he'd already made up for an exhibit in February, Black History Month. And so that'll premiere next month using all this research he had done on the Buffalo Soldiers and Cathay Williams, so, yeah.
So he keeps going. He's like the Energizer Bunny. He's a painter. I heard you painted this room. We're getting ready to do it again, Tom. You might supervise me. He's a carpenter. Cashier. When Tom and I really messed up the cash register several times, haven't we? And he'd say, I don't know what I did wrong. And I said, I don't know either, but we better call somebody to help us out. He takes donations and everything. Great volunteer for everything. A great supporter of the museum. And he also is a grant writer. So Tom, I just want you to fill all the
checks whenever they were doing the reconstruction here. Bill Zwick would tell me how much we paid that contract. It was a bunch of money. I was the one writing the check, but Bill Zwick always told me how much.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we have a couple more people. You don't have to worry about what to say quite yet. Next, I'll invite Charles to come speak for the Pueblo Archaeological and Historical Society.
I'll just speak from here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tom's been a member of the Pueblo Archaeological and Historical Society since I don't know when, since I joined long after he did. But he was also a founding member of the Southeastern Colorado Heritage Center. I was president of the Historical Society at that time, and I remember that. Tom grew up in the Branson area of southeastern Colorado. And when back then Branson was a bustling farming and ranching community. His stories from the area when he was young helped bring the area to life and to give people a better understanding of the early days. Tom attended a small school when he was young. Was that a one room?
Yes.
Yeah. We have a one-room schoolroom exhibit back there. Tom actually went to one room. But in the Western Heritage, instead of riding the bus, he rode his horse to school. He's led a number of field trips to the historical and archaeological sites in the area, and his early relationships to ranchers in the area have made it possible to access sites that would otherwise have been off limits to tours. Tom's tours have also resulted in a number of people being jailed in the historic Branson jail, which is, of course, a great photo opportunity. If you've ever seen the Branson jail, it's interesting. His work on the gas pipeline that ran across southeastern Colorado also gave him the opportunity to learn more about the area and develop relationships with other ranchers that have led to more field trips. Now, during the time of the formation of the Southeastern Colorado Heritage Center, Tom was active in working with the city and the several agencies that came together to form the Heritage Center, as he has already said. The birth of the center was not an easy one. There were difficult times, as there were competing ideas and philosophies about what the center should be and particularly how it should be run. But Tom persisted, and we owe him a debt of gratitude for sticking with it and helping our Heritage Center become what it is today. Also, several years ago, when we were desperate for board members, and I think we were running with two vacancies, Tom was able to be coaxed into becoming a board member again. And it was much better the second time around, I think. So he stepped up, filled the position for several years. Tom, thank you for all that you have done for the center. Now, I wasn't asked to do this little bit, I'm gonna do it on my own. Thank you, Debbie, for being president. You took over from me, right? It's amazing. I've been president of the Archaeological Society and the center, and it's amazing how much better things get when I give up the presidency. So thank you, Debbie, for all you've done in the years that you've been president, because we've seen a great deal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say one thing?
Please do.
About me riding a horse to school? His name was Lonesome. My dad pastured a bunch of horses for a man one time, and when the guy come to take his horses away, this one mare had a colt. They rode all over the pasture everywhere looking for that colt. They couldn't find it. And so he went ahead and took his horses and left. A couple of days later, my dad was out in the pasture and he found his colt standing there. It had nothing to eat or anything. He brought it in and he told that guy I'd found it. He said, well, I was about to be born at the same time. So he said, just give it to Tom. So that was my horse. When I went to school, I rode that horse to school.
And isn't it right, Tom? We have a picture of you and is it your sister on the horse?
Yeah.
Going to school. Yeah, back in our schoolhouse exhibit back here. So, yeah. That's great. Next, I'd like to welcome Mary Wallace to come to the floor, as she's a member of the Pueblo County Historical Society, and she'd like to say some words too.
Well, I'm very happy to be able to talk about Tom, but Charles took half of my speech. But I'll start with the Vail Hotel. Tom and I think we started together about the same time in the Vail Hotel, and I don't know if you've ever been there. I worked with the photos upstairs in the library, and in the Vail Hotel, you went downstairs and you went here, and went here, and you went over here, and the photos were way over there. And I always said where the photos were was across the street of the street. And also, Tom, to move all of this material to this, there was a door that so helped me, I don't know if it was in the parking lot of across the street from the hotel or the bar next door. Do you remember where that door came in?
I never remember.
Oh, they back in the trunks because you couldn't get them up the elevator. And so anyway, Tom helped with the photographs and the books and everything down there. So and Tom, I'll tell you what, the article he read, he was there every inch of the way. And I was happy to be able to follow along and try to pick up the pieces and help him. But also, as Charles was talking about all that Tom has done in the southeastern Colorado Heritage part of the state, I think he needs a star from the southeastern Colorado. He has done a lot of work, yes, here at the Heritage Center, but also in Branson and that whole area. I think you even helped with the work that we did at the Trinidad Museum and the college at Trinidad. We just moved stuff from one town to the other, and Tom was always there. And Tom, were you on a group that moved the rocks from the Abbey?
Yes.
Okay, if you go back to and see my rocks, they call them my rocks, the archaeology rocks, Tom was on a group that helped move those rocks from the museum at the Abbey, the Holy Cross Abbey in Canyon. They were in that museum. So he helped he's done all the rock work and everything from one end to the other. And it was good, and Tom was always there, and I was always happy to help, and the other members of the Historical Society. And Tom, you will continue to be a valuable asset to the Pueblo County Historical Society. And I'm happy that we were able
I just wanted to add something to your rock wall. I was dusting the other day, and it was last Saturday, and there were some volunteers in there, and they were looking at your wall. And I heard him talking, and somebody said, "Do you think those rocks are real?" And the guy said, "Oh no, there's no way they could have brought those rocks in here." So I had to go over and say, yes, they did. They actually built this wall with the real rocks. So they were very impressed.
Those rocks came off of your ranch.
Okay, I'll explain what I call it. We had a farm at Swallows. At the Swallows, there's nothing there now except the cemetery, which I'm the president of the association. But anyway, our farm was there at the end of what is now the reservoir. On this, and if you look at the video that goes through, those rocks were, there's a cliff and there was an overhang like that, and they were in this overhang. And when the railroad moved us out, had to move out, we wanted to preserve those rocks. We contacted the Archaeologist Society, University of Denver, all that, said, no, you can't do it. Well, we found a hard rock, gentleman that did a lot of hard rock work with mines and everything, and he says, we'll show those college kids how to do it. And we did. He was able to, and if you look to loosen the rock away from the cliff, and we put them and brought them to the Canyon City Abbey. They were the ones that had the history of, do a lot of history with the Indians and the native, this part of the country. And they were there until the museum closed. And then we had a committee that moved them to here, so that's why I call them my rocks. Anyway, so, then Tom was on that committee, group that helped move them. And it took quite a bit, but we got it done.
Yeah, if you haven't seen those, they've got Indian paintings on them, and the railroad was gonna just dynamite them. And the Wallace family is the one that saved it, but if you want to see them, they're on display back here.
Right. I think it was like a Saturday or Sunday that we finally got out of the enclosure up on top. On Wednesday, they blasted the railroad. The whole shelf that was on is now part of the railroad. And you can still walk to where they came. You have to walk there. And the University of Denver archaeologists did a survey of the area, and they left everything on top. They surveyed, and one of the archaeologists from DU, he was a senior, and he was graduating, and that was the project he had to finish, ended up being the head archaeologist in Johannesburg, Africa. So those rocks had a lot of history and have helped a lot of people. Anyway, Tom was, everywhere Tom went, everything worked out fine.
When they was getting ready to dynamite those rocks, they've got a lot of Indian paintings on them, and the Wallace family saved them. But what they did, they took pictures of them before they was moved.
Yes, we did.
And they're installed back here just the way they were out there.
Yeah, I took most of those pictures and some others, but yes, it was quite a project.
Well, Tom, you got your fingers and pots all over the state. West of here, south and east of here. That rock art panel is my favorite piece of the collection, so everybody should look at that. But another thing I just want to say, Tom shared with me a video of an oral history that somebody had done down in Branson, his hometown. And they went and recorded him and 2 or 3 other folks that grew up in Branson. And that video's on YouTube. It's this hour-long thing. And I mean, it's amazing. I'll post that on Facebook so y'all can all see how Tom's influence goes from one corner to the other. I'll introduce our final speaker on Tom, Betty Duran with the Fray Angelico Chavez chapter of the Genealogical Society of Hispanic America. Betty really helped organize this event, so let's give it up to her.
Thank you, Spencer, and thank you everyone for being here today. As Spencer said, I represent the Fray Angelico Chavez chapter of the Genealogical Society of Hispanic America. So when I talk, I'm going to say FACC. I'm not going to say the whole, I'll say FACC. FACC was organized in 1986, 33 years ago. 11 years later, in 1997, FACC became one of the founding organizations of the Southeastern Colorado Heritage Center. Up until 1997, meetings were being held at homes, I think, restaurants, and libraries. The city of Pueblo had purchased the building, and they wanted nonprofit organizations to operate a meeting place and a museum under the name Southeastern Colorado Heritage Center, SCHC. Now doing business as the Pueblo Heritage Museum. Tom was president of the SCHC, and Charlene Garcia Sims was president of FACC. Tom asked Charlene if FACC would want to be part of SCHC as a nonprofit organization, and this was approved by the board, and so this has been our home for the past 22 years. We found a home thanks to Tom. Charlene sends her regrets, she couldn't be here today, but I want to quote a comment that Charlene made many, many years ago about Tom. She said, "That man doesn't have a mean bone in his body." Among other things, Tom helped with the first museum exhibit for FACC. When we didn't know where to start, he made suggestions and he encouraged us. He helped, we needed a platform, he helped with that. We needed display cases, he helped with that. And we needed overhead lighting. He got up on a ladder and he was up there on this ladder, and I would hold my breath. Every time he got up on that ladder, I would hold my breath. He was up there working with the overhead lighting. So I held my breath a lot of times. So after knowing Tom a few years and seeing how unselfish he gave his time, his effort, his abilities, and expecting nothing in return, I learned the meaning of the word altruism, unselfish concern for the welfare of others. That has earned Tom the respect of others. And that's why we're here today. Tom's been with us through thick and thin, through the good and the bad times. So we thank you, Tom.
Well, thank you everybody for those words. Thanks especially to you, Tom, for being here all